I really can't live like this anymore, but I can't stop today. I'll just have a drink. I'll just have a line of cocaine then. And tomorrow we'll look at this as something serious and off course. That's picture this. Eric Clapton sits alone backstage. His guitar sitting on his lap, cigarette burning beside. A half-empty glass of whiskey. Stage is quiet now, but in his mind, this music voice is not just any voice, women's voices that haunt him. He'll hum and keep him in place. The women watch changed the way he listened. The way he played. Clapton's career has always been about feelings, bleeding fingers, broken hearts, blues soaked in sweat, but behind that tough guy act was always respect. When he talks about the women who moved him, it's with wonder. Here. The 6 women who left the biggest mark on Slowhand's soul, and first there was one voice that broke through the noise like a storm with no warning. Janis Joplin. She wasn't fancy, she was pure lightning. When Clapton first heard Janis sing, it was like hearing Zameen break open on stage. There was no fox stuff, no fear. She didn't care if her voice cracked. She cared if it hurt, and it always did. They hung out in the same places in the late 60s, meeting up in San Francisco and backstage at Blue. One crazy night at the Fillmore, Janis asked Clapton if he wanted to play music together. He said no, nervous and amazed. He later said it was one of his biggest mistakes. They shared more than a few wild nights in the hippie scene on Cedar, and after party Clapton found Janis alone on a rooftop with a bottle in her lap, singing quietly into the fog. They didn't talk much, but he sat busy to her, lit a cigarette and listened in thought. She sounded more real than he'd ever heard. He remembered the smell of the city beer, sweat, smoke, and how her voice rose through it like something holy and broken. Janis didn't sing to show off, she sang to survive. Tohim. Janis wasn't just a rock singer, she was a blues preacher with a bottle in one hand and heartbreak in the other. Affair that never cooled down. She lived fast, gave everything on stage, and left nothing behind but smoke, silence, and songs that still echo. And then came another voice, one with fire in her slide, playing and soul in her silence. Bonnie Raitt. If there was ever a female version of Clapton's own guitar and tough guy journey, it was Bonnie. Her slide guitar playing made him look twice, but her singing made him stop cold. There was something in her tone that reminded him of the Deep South. Dusty bars, worn out amps, and a voice that carried more history than any textbook, which I've worked on as best I can. It could. I mean, if I hadn't spent all that time that I did, getting messed up, I maybe a little bit better. They met for real in the early 80s during a charity concert in a lock. Clapton watched her from the side of the stage, amazed by her control. Later that night they shared whiskey and stories about their shared love for the blues. He was struck by her calm presence, her total lack of showing off. She talked about Mississippi John Hurt like she'd known him about Muddy Waters like a friend. Her roots ran deep in the years that followed. They sometimes met up at blues shows and award ceremonies. Once in New Orleans, they ended up at the same late-night jam session in a smoky bar. Bonnie took the stage, plugged in, and played a version of Love Me like a man that left even the old session player squeak. Clapton joined her for one song, A Slow Hurting. 12 bars, blues, and when I tended, he simply nodded the words, just respect. They never recorded together, but that didn't matter. Clapton always said she didn't need his spotlight. She had her own to him. Bonnie was the exemplar of good taste, never flashy, always felt shouldn't chase the crowd. She led them with heart, skill, and steel beneath her fingertips. Then came a force of nature wrapped in sparkles and scars. Tina Turner's didn't just survive, she flew high. Tina Turner's voice hit Clapton like a punch bat. It wasn't just the sound, it was the history behind it. He knew what it meant to fall, to break, to fight back from addiction and sadness. In Tina, she made a serving sound like a song. In 1986 they performed together at a private church, even in London. No cameras, no reporters, just music. Clapton remembered watching her practice in heels, controlling theorem like a queen. She was fearless, controlled, soaked in purpose. After Theo say they sat backstage and rude scars, his addictions, her past with Ike, no pity, just mutual respect. To survivors talking like veterans off the same war. In the following years they often met up at festivals and industry events. Once in Paris, Clapton found himself unexpectedly sitting next to her at a dinner honoring blues legends. They talked late into the night, not about fame but about fear, about pressure, about how music had saved them both more times than they could count. He looked up to her discipline, her toughness, trained like an athlete, practiced like a soldier, and performed like a god. She once told him that every time she stepped on stage it felt like being saved. Their friendship was quiet but deep. A shared language of survival held them together. Clapton respected her beyond their music. She was fire, she was style, she was freedom, and then there was a voice like no other, a voice that twisted melody into poetry and made silence feel special. Joni Mitchell. She wasn't blues, wasn't rock, she wasn't folk, she was Joni. Clapton loved tricky stuff, and Joni gave it in waves. Her word mazes, her refusal Tobe put in a box. She inspired him more than most people knew. The mid-70s, they spent a weekend together in Laurel, canyonicking music and listening to old jazz chords. Clapton admitted he couldn't figure out half her chord changes John Loden played, something even stranger. They never worked together, but the conversation stuck. Her unpredictability clickle him that weekend stayed with him. They talked deep into the night about everything, art, getting older, fair Clapton was going through a dark time at the time, and Joni with her sharp calm seemed to see through him. She didn't try to fix him, she just listened. And then when the silence stretched too long, she played her remembered how she sang a quiet, unfinished song. While sitting on the floor barefoot lost in her own world, he didn't know what the words meant, but they broke something open in him. She wasn't performing. For him she was being to Clapton. Joni wasn't a Styles, was a universe, a reminder that the truth in music sometimes lies in what you can't explain, and when it came to raw honesty, dressed in a leather jacket and eyeliner, there was only one name that came to mind. Chrissie Hynde. Clapton respected attitude, and Chrissie had attitude for days. She was punk without faking, rock without pretending. The Pretenders' frontwoman came out swinging in the late 70s, and Clapton couldn't look away. They met at a Bob de Pig. In 1981, she was practicing Who Atched in silence later that night. Hess and her, at Note You Remind Me, with honesty sounds like she kept it. That meeting sparked a quiet, but long-lasting respect they weren't close. In the normal sense, no tours, no sessions, but there was a connection between them. Sometimes their paths would cross at events or backstage ring festivals. Clapton always made a time to stand in the wings. When Shep performed, he liked the way she didn't try to charm the crowd. She challenged them. Once in New York, they ended up sitting side by side at a Lou Reed tribute. After a few drinks, they slip a dinto, an honest conversation, a Booth state of rock, the weight of legacy and the pressure of staying true. Chrissie Hynde has ever told him she'd rather be hated for honesty than loved for playing it safe. He never forgot that. There was a meaning in her voice, cool, sharp, buffeting underneath, that reminded him of the British blues scene. At its mostest, she didn't chase popularity, she chased truth, and truth, Clapton always said, was the only thing worth plugging in for. And finally, among all the icons came a younger voice, fierce, grounded, and already timeless Susan Tedeschi. They aren't just on his list, but no less fierce. Clapton saw in Susan a new wave of soul-soaked rock that honored tradition with that, copying at her guitar, playing clean, expressive, tough her voice. A slow burn that could knock down walls, and more than that she had realness, the author-defined quality he knew couldn't be tooed. They toured together in the early 2000s. Clapton was struck by her humility, didn't demand attention. She simply commented it one night after a show in Chicago. They stayed on stage long after his crowd had left, jamming with Derek Trucks and laughing like old friends. Clapton remembered how her solos told stories raw and unfiltered. There was a night in Austin he never forgot. After the encore, backstage was buzzing, but Susan sat quietly barefoot playing a gospel tune on acoustic. He sat down and joined her, just the two of them, their guitars whispering truths words couldn't. In that moment, it wasn't about careers or fame, it was about connection, about two musicians speaking the same emotional language. She didn't ask for praise, she earned it. Clapton said watching her play reminded him why he picked up a guitar in the first place. Brought soul back to the stage, not kind that begged to be seen, but thinking that needed to be felt. Susan did not just carry the torch, she lit her own path, and every time she played, Clapton felt the fire grow a little brighter. Eric Clapton has played with legends, but when he talks about these women, there's no ego, just respect. These weren't just influences, they were lifelines, compass points. Each of them marked a turning point, a revelation, a reminder that Tronis and fancy stuff could live side by side. They didn't just sing, they meantate. They told the truth when it wasn't popular, bled on stage when the world wanted fake stuff. For Clapton, their music was in background, it was bloodline. It reminded him where he came from and where he needed to go, and in a world where rock was often written by men, these women carved out thunder with nothing but a voice and a will. They didn't wait for permission, they didn't ask for space, they took it and filled